They're not meant to just sit like that for years. If you're not going to drive your car, put race gas in the car. That's fuel that doesn't separate. But rather than put race gas in your car, drive your car a little bit.
Today on Tiafo Garage, we have a very special event. We're heading over to Patrick Ottis' shop in Berkeley. He's a very well-known shop that restores Ferraris, Dinos, and other Ferraris, so very much looking forward to seeing what he's got to offer. This is part of the Ferrari Owners Club here in the Bay Area. Welcome to Tiafo Garage, where we try it and find out. On this channel, we feature DIY on some classic cars. We also chronicle the classic car ownership experience here in the San Francisco Bay Area in California.
Tiafo Garage.
We made it here to Patrick Ottis. I don't know, Chris, did you drive through like some homeless people? Like some?
No, I went a different route.
My Dino's here in action. Is this an Alfa? What is that?
That is an Alfa.
Okay.
It's pretty funny.
Yeah. Looks nice and original. Here we have a 355. Nice exposed engine. There's some subtle differences over the years, but I'm not sure what they are for the various models. Chris, do you know the differences on the 355s? Like, I know there's subtle differences, like these are, I think that it's not a Y on the early ones or something, I don't know.
I do not know the differences.
Okay, no worries. So, and it is a manual, which is always nice to see. People are saying the 355s are becoming like the next Dino, you know, the form. Yeah, 300 and something for for 98, right? Yeah, unbelievable. I could see for 95 because of the OBD1, but I don't know. And it was a Europe
Well,
model.
it was a GTS model.
GTS, yeah.
GTS is pretty rare.
Yeah.
And it was a manual.
Yeah,
Which
I mean, yeah, not a
it
non-manual.
wasn't rare, but I think these were the first cars with F1.
Yes, I believe that's right.
So
yeah. And there's a huge value difference in the, of course, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, I was surprised. But you know, the form factor, because the 360s and the 430s they're quite a bit bigger. This is actually about the same length as the Dino, a little wider, but yeah, so it's got that kind of small car feel.
This is probably the most modern Ferrari I would want.
Yeah.
I like old cars too.
Yeah, yes. But the engine outs, that's what stopped me. But
yeah.
Here's a nice 308.
You ever driven one of these?
No.
So I got to drive one of these not too long ago. It's a really good car.
Yeah.
It's a world of difference between the 308s and even mine. So.
Oh, is that right? Okay. People say yours is better driving in some ways than these.
It's better. I think it's a better
handling. Yeah, because of closed coupe.
You know, but that's the old carbureted. This is all fuel injected, more modern. I don't like the interiors on these because of all the plastic buttons. And
yeah, it's 80s-ish, right?
I definitely enjoy the interior of the 308.
Yeah.
But even though this doesn't have power steering or anything, it's an easier car to drive.
It's interesting.
So this is better for, like, I think, in a traffic situation.
Yeah.
Whereas mine's better for fun.
Right. Look at all these little, oh, that's a fuel injection high pressure line, so yeah. And then here we have is this a V12?
An old cool, yeah, I feel like all the old ones are V12s.
Yeah. So it's probably a Colombo.
I don't know what the model is.
Yeah.
But,
this gets beyond our level. Oh man, look at the interior. Oh yeah, right-hand drive. Gosh, it's really stunning. It's so petite also. Beautiful. Here's the second bay and a 330 here. These are pretty.
yeah, I really like that. That color
Oh,
is
yeah.
really good on that.
Yes, beautiful.
And I normally don't like lighter blues. Like, I prefer darker colors in general.
Yeah.
Man, this is
No, that's a handsome.
just gorgeous.
And I like the rears, especially on these. And of course, it's the 2-seat coupe, right? Which the 4-seat ones had like the 4 headlights in the front. Oh, look at this little detail.
Yeah, I always love
yours.
that about this.
Yeah.
I think this is one of my, I don't know, it's always hard to say what my favorite,
Yeah.
like 12-cylinder Ferrari is.
Right.
But I always like these. Like, I like them better than the 250 GT, like Buso, which is
Yeah.
I'm a
One
big fan
of
that.
your. So I don't know what this is. It's a.
I feel like it's
This
an
is-
Alfa, but I don't
yeah.
know either.
It's interesting to see it in that form.
Oh, here we go. No, I thought the steering wheel would help.
Doesn't help.
No. No logos. I feel like it's an Alfa.
It's
but I don't.
I think I agree. It's old.
It's definitely old.
Why don't you start it up, Chris?
I think there's a logo on the key.
We have a Daytona here, coupe. This is the type of lift that lifts from the jack points rather than driving on. It's got the 2 Dino plexes, 2 oil filters. Just look at the Daytona engine here. Look at all those carbs. Quite a beast.
I wonder if it's a classic key.
Yeah, could be the Red Book or whatever.
Could be the
Yeah. So it looks so much like the Dino because it's from the same era. The
Very much,
Daytona
yeah.
seats, the dash configuration.
So I've heard these are particularly painful to drive.
Yeah, well, the steering, right?
Yeah.
Manual steering and a big, heavy V12 because
Yeah.
the Dino, there's more weight in the back.
Exactly.
So.
I'd like to drive one to see how bad it is.
Yes, yeah. And then the GTC4, GTB4 had power. The 4-seat version of this had power steering and and side draft. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think the carbs are on the side instead of in the top to get a lower hood, and then it has power steering.
Interesting.
And it looks different. But
Very interesting. Yeah, it looks different.
yeah.
I was always a fan of this car because my first 2 cars were Datsun 280Z
Okay.
and Datsun 260Z.
Okay. It
Of
has
course,
a kind of
they're
a.
similar.
Yeah, I
shape.
guess.
And,
Yes.
of course, as a 20-year-old kid, I
Yeah.
couldn't afford a Daytona.
Right.
But I could afford a Z car.
Yes. There's a nice little touch of originality. I believe my Dino has an A letter like that somewhere.
Interesting.
And then, certainly the Secure It thing.
Yeah.
Mine has that, and yours probably does too.
Yeah, mine definitely has
Yeah.
that.
And this is our. What do we think? This is 375
It's a
GT.
it's
275 GTB,
GTB.
and then maybe 4 usually means 4. I think it's 4 valves per cylinder.
Yeah, that's usually what it is. This might be a GTB.
Yeah. Does it say?
It just says GTB,
Okay.
275 GTB.
Yeah. I just went through all the battery situation, and I'm glad to see he's got an interstate battery, which is what I have.
That's what I have.
Yeah. Looking at mine, it's kind of like gas. It's like just get the freshest ones that are used, that have a high throughput.
I love originality, but there's some things like I don't care if the battery is.
Yeah. Here we have a frame. Fill holes. Or I think that's instructions. Fill the holes. Yeah. I don't know. I'm sure it's something somewhat special.
Patrick Ottis Restoration Tour. This is Patrick Ottis himself.
Welcome, you guys.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much for the-
Welcome to our little humble auto repair shop. We only service and repair Ferraris in a mechanical way. We don't do any paint work, no body work, no glass, don't do any trim, we just do the mechanical repair, electrical repair, all the driveline, suspension, brake plumbing, fuel plumbing, all that. We rebuild sometimes as many as a dozen early Ferrari motors a year here. I don't know any shop in the US that does more than that. We wind up being a sublet vendor to a number of other shops. A lot of times we will get a motor even in boxes that needs to be made to look like that and go back to its owner. A lot of times we never even see the car. I thought what I would do is tell you about each of the cars here. So the black 328 here is here for cam belt service. That's just being finished, and that guy is going to pick the car up Monday afternoon. The 355 is also here for a motor out cam belt service. That car is going to go away on Tuesday or Wednesday. That's almost finished. The aqua colored 246 over there, we restored about 10 years ago for a lovely couple in Alberta, Canada. It had a year or so ago, it had an electrical fire. It sort of burned up the entire wiring harness under the dash. So I had a new wiring harness manufactured in Italy for that car, and it's all dutifully back in place, and now I'm waiting for some instruments to finish the job. The silver 330 GTC here is here for kind of a combination of little things to include the windshield, which is all going to be accomplished on Monday. The red 250mm here, really special car. Ferrari made about 30 250mm's in 53. A racer named Bracco won the Mille Miglia in 52 with a sister car to this, the very first car like this. When they built the other 30 cars after Bracco's car, they designated these as the MN. So this is a 250mm coupe. Pininfarina bodied about half of them, so half of them were coupes, and Vignali bodied the other 15 cars, but they were all spiders. This car belongs to a man in Ohio who brought it here to run California Mille, and it's got issues. The clutch doesn't work the way it should, and it's got a brake issue, a front brake sticking on issue, and some other things that we're going to address. And this car is meant to go to Quail in August, and he didn't want to take it back to Ohio. So we're going to address the mechanical issues that it has.
Anything special about the electrical fire on how it happened? Or
Ignition
what
switch.
failed?
Ignition switch failed. And I've seen about 3, in all the years, I've seen about 3 ignition switch fail in those cars. And so, to your point, one of the things that I would recommend in all of these cars, I would disconnect the battery, have a battery disconnect in your cars when they're in storage at the house or whatever.
Patrick, on a car like this, to where it's, has original racing heritage, what do you do to make it more compatible with driving on like the 1,000-mile drives?
This car didn't get driven enough. This car got a restoration back east. The man spent $1 million on the restoration, and it went 8 miles before it was on the side of the road. We're going to sort those things, but I think one of our claims to fame is the car needs to work like a car when it's done. Ed would agree with this. This car is overdone. This car is way nicer than it was in 1953. We've all tried desperately to not over restore. These cars were handmade. They were a little bit like your mother's quilt. There should be evidence of file marks, and this was a tool to go racing. And it didn't look like this in 1953. And it's gorgeous and all of those things, but it's too gorgeous. Part of the problem is this is what people want. They want perfection. Well, this wasn't perfection in 1953. It was a handmade car, and it should have more evidence of that. There's too much polish. That grille is way more polished and perfect than it was in 1953. So when this car came to us, it had a clear film on it, on the front of the car. And the guy didn't want any rock chips. I said, get a rock chip on it. Make it look like it had been driven, so we took all the clear crap off of it. And I said, now, your homework assignment is to go run it up the road and get a rock chip on it. There's 3 or 4 people who can back this up here. No points off for evidence that the car's been run. 5 or 6 years ago, we did a 4-cylinder Ferrari. My son and I did it for ourselves. He ran the wheels off of it at Laguna Seca on Saturday, and the next day, we won our class at Pebble Beach in M2 in the Ferrari race car class. It still had race rubber stuck to the paint, and the judges loved it. I wanted to share with people that you can actually use your car.
The problem we have is that, the shows that use our Ferrari judging standards allow for evidence that the cars have been driven. But there are shows out there that are purely subjective, and they use judges that don't know originality. They don't have that much knowledge of judging to begin with, and so they fall back on cosmetics. Now at Pebble Beach, what we finally wound up doing, as Pat knows, is that we actually added an item to the judging sheet where you can deduct for over restoration, because I preached that for years and it wasn't taking. But once we put it on the judging sheet, and at a show like Pebble Beach where things scores are so tight and things get very serious down there, once we put it on the judging sheet and we judge for over restoration, it got the idea across to many of those people.
We got an F40 here that I just did a cam belt service on. It had been sitting unused for 14 years. It was dead. The fuel pumps, the rubber surround for the pumps had disintegrated in the fuel tanks. The injectors, all of that was all just, they all had to be recommissioned. And it was an involved recommission. People who don't drive their cars, they're not meant to just sit like that for years. Fuel additives aren't a bad thing, but if you're actually willing to drive your car a little bit, it's not really necessary. California fuel is full of ethanol and alcohol, and what happens is after about 6 months, those fluids separate from the gasoline and they sit at the bottom of the tank, and alcohol attacks and eats anything that's at the bottom of the tank. But if you drive your car a little bit, that fuel will stay in solution, and then you're okay. If you're not going to drive your car, put race gas in the car. That's fuel that doesn't separate. But rather than put race gas in your car, drive your car a little bit.
You heard it straight from Patrick Ottis. Drive your cars, enjoy them. Go get those rock chips. So this was part one. We will have a follow-on video for more of Patrick Ottis and the experience at his shop, where he's going to talk about the balance of the Ferraris in the second bay in the shop there, as well as some of the history and love of Alfa Romeos and how the team that built some of those Alfa Romeos pre-war ended up being the same folks who took on the Ferrari designs post-war. So that's a interesting part of the story that we will cover here next time on Tiafa Garage. If you enjoy this type of content, please do consider subscribing. It will help the channel and help us produce additional content like this. Thank you.
Tiafa Garage.